Tom, and I am coming to you live again in another effort to offer you a reflection upon the hazards that I see as attending the public discourse at large around artificial intelligence and related technologies. I offered a series of thoughts yesterday, but the audio there was suboptimal, and to put it diplomatically. So hopefully we have at least partially resolved those difficulties going into the moment now. And, getting ready for this sort of reflection, which still is essentially, well, it was extemporaneous as of tomorrow, save that I did refamiliarize myself with the etymology of the word robot that is sort of in the background of a lot of the discussion, the talk, the conversation around these themes of so-called artificial intelligence, etc. And it is a word whose emergence into the English language we can surprisingly locate with relative specificity. That is in or around 1920, 21, or 22, because it is a word derived as a coinage from a play by Karel Capek, um, possibly with the collaboration of his brother Joseph. The play Rossum's Universal Robots, a Czech play. The word in Czech is robotnik, and thus we get robot in English in the translation of that play. The word robotnik comes from the word for drudgery, forced toil, and ultimately going back to the old Slavic, I believe, is the word for slave, uh, with resonance, interestingly, with the concept of orphanage. And there I think there's a cue to how a kind of cultural rootlessness oftentimes can be associated with subjugation, with slavery, and with the mechanical character that tends to pervade an existence marked by this plight. So now we're at a junction where we are tempted to embrace the robotic as a kind of terrifying salvation. I can't believe I'm even saying that, but this is, I think, the sort of feeling we get when we sit down and really allow the discussion around these softwares to sort of percolate. There's this energy, this air of enthusiasm. And what sort of really got my dander up of late was this somewhat recently emerged, in terms of at least where it's getting a lot of publicity, Chat GPT, which is a so-called natural language recognition and generation software framework that uses modes of machine learning to endeavor to generate replies given from humanly articulated queries. And the software has enough flexibility that the illusion, and it is, I want to emphasize, an illusion, the illusion of a sort of conversation can emerge. Now, I want to emphasize the fact that the word conversation is deeply inappropriate philosophically, as is the use of so many words in this vicinity of discourse, whether we're talking about learning, so-called machine learning, or even things such as, well, even fundamentally, the concept of intelligence and artificial intelligence itself really falls down when we start to understand how these mechanisms actually operate. Because despite the utilities and sometimes the extraordinary utilities to which we can turn and use these frames, at the end of the day, there's still a lot of essentially sophisticated abacuses, or abaci if you prefer. You know, or even the notion of a neural network is something of a misnomer. What you have is a series of relays that are nested to recursively exchange inputs and outputs to sort of approach more and more accurate results, but the accuracy of those results is actually itself relative to human determination. And there is human determination all the way down the line. Even if you come to the recognition that these softwares do sort of exhibit a usefulness as far as generating kinds of pattern recognition from software sets, what you have to recall is that the designation of those patterns themselves are ultimately the result of human interpretation. In the background, there is always a sentient entity applying an interpretive framework to the output of these machines. The machines themselves are bereft of sentience, bereft of volition, bereft of personhood. And thus it is salutary for us to recall that etymology of the word robot, right? The machines have the character of servility. And what's incredibly hazardous in my view about how we discuss these machines and how we give so much enthusiasm away to them is that we are forgetting our own agency, our own intelligence, our own capacities, and a fashion that leads to our own subjugation. So we are becoming robotic in virtue of our fascination with these machines. Fascination. Attached to, as it were, right? And we really, I would just say we really need to take that circumstance much more seriously than we are. Just to sort of return to the word intelligence for a moment. What is it? What is intelligence but a kind of discernment that arises in the space of consciousness? It is not something which comes out of a machine. A mode of intelligence, an artificial intelligence, if it was a reality, would not be anything like what we are designating by that term. What we are designating by these terms are just architectures of electron exchange that are proceeding to concatenations of patterns that are predicated upon binary mathematical frameworks with the deployment of certain probabilistic mathematics. A caveat here would be that, well, in virtue of probability playing such a marked role in these mechanisms, is there not an indeterminacy within which something like agency can arise? Well, that is really a position that relies on equivocation as to the significance of that indeterminacy. The output generated by the machine does not reflect a decision on the part of the machine, but simply an adherence to the implication of the programming, an implication which is often weighted by the terms of the mathematics themselves. So to bring this back to the immediate sort of historical occasion of my reflection here, this GPT 3.5, with which so many people are currently enamored, I have to just ask, please desist or dramatically moderate your interaction with these kinds of frameworks, with ChatGPT, etc., etc. And why and wherefore? Because in the process of increasingly engaging with these technologies, these tools, you are encouraging an atrophy of your own intelligence, your own agency, your own dignity, really, as a human being, which may sound like a stark thing to say, but and the problem doesn't reside actually in the tools themselves, but in the cultural context and the manner in which we are framing and deploying them. What they're doing is they're creating a circumstance of perilous dependency on systems. Systems soulless themselves in character, with no interest, if I'm going to indulge in some anthropomorphism myself, in a genuinely fulfilled human life or culture. Even the people, it is antithetical even to the interests of those at the commanding heights of these systems, these institutions, and then the attendant infrastructures, to continue along those ways, even from a spiritual standpoint, because of how they encourage us to fall out of our own minds. And unfortunately, that's not just a turn of phrase, a kind of hyperbole. If you just pay attention, as I pay attention to myself, as I see what I experience when I interact with these technologies, a kind of deadening, a kind of fracturing of my own, I feel like my mind becomes fragmented, drawn out of the present in ways that are frankly disturbing when I really sit and observe what it feels like to be on my phone, And so I guess this plea, which has perhaps a desperate and almost antiquarian quality to it, I'm just begging you to just desist from such avid embrace of these frameworks, which are taking us out of our own reality, and then as a consequence taking us out of what is actually exigent to addressing the problems of our world today. So please just stop quote unquote talking with machines, because you know what, machines can't talk. ChatGPT doesn't know how to converse. Stockfish doesn't play chess. AlphaGo doesn't play Go. They're just running code and issuing results, and those results can be construed under humanly imposed patterns, but there's no actual interface there. Interface with another mind. And that's where real conversation happens, with another mind or other minds, other subjectivities, other souls. You're not going to get that from a machine. And if our society is to evolve to a place of health, then we need to dramatically moderate our use of machines and our relationships with them. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts, my 2 cents, as it were. And I guess that's all for now. I'll catch you guys on the flip. Hopefully the audio on this one is better. And I'm going to move on to other topics subsequently. Thank you all. Signing off for now.